Hi everyone and welcome to lesson 7, solving quadratics by factoring completely. So our focus question for today is how can we factor an expression completely? So what does this mean? So in lesson 5, we went over the product sum method. And now we're just going to add one little step prior to that method that's going to involve the greatest common factor. But first we're going to review product sum method. Okay, so your first step. So here, I don't want you to solve for x. I just want us to factor. Okay. The solving for x is pretty much the easy part. You set it equal to 0 and solve. The factoring is more of the difficult part. So first things first, if you remember from lesson 5, we identify our a, b, and c values. So a is our invisible number next to x squared, which is 1 here. B equals 6. And c equals to 8. So the next thing you want to do is see what are the factors of 8? So the factors of 8 are 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. Now, step 3, which of these factors add to our middle value, which is 6? So that means, we know that 2 plus 4 is going to equal to 6. So those are going to be our factors. So we're going to put this into factored form, which is going to be x plus 2 times x plus 4. So if we multiply this out, if we distribute this, it's going to become this. Okay. So next, we have x squared minus 8x plus 15. So let's write out our a, b, and c. A is 1, b is negative 8, careful of your signs, and c is 15. Okay. So what are our factors of 15? So we have 1 times 15 and 3 times 5. Okay. Now, third step, we need to see what's going to add to our b value, which is negative 8. So if I look back at my factors of 15, I see both of them are positive, and there's no way they can be negative 8. So that means that both of our factors are going to have to be negative. Okay, because a negative times a negative also gives you a positive, and it would add to a negative. So the only factors that would give me negative 8 would be a negative 3 and a negative 5. Okay, so that means our factored form is going to be x minus 3 times x minus 5. All right, so what does factoring completely mean? So let's take a look at the following expression. So here we have 2x squared plus 18x plus 28. So if you notice, here we're dealing with a number in front of the x squared that we haven't dealt with yet. So that always makes things difficult, and you always want to try to get rid of the number in front of that x squared if you can. So here in this case we can. So step 1, first thing you want to ask yourself is, does this expression have a greatest common factor? So if there is, factor it out. Okay, so in this case, this does. If you look at 2x squared, 18, and 28, the greatest common factor here, the greatest number that goes into all of them is 2. If you need to, just like I showed you in the video in week 1, you can write out the factors of each one. So this is going to be 1, 2x, and x. 18x is 1, 2, 8, 3, not 8, sorry. 3, 9, 1, 2, 3, 9, 18, and 1x. And 28 is going to be 1, 2, 4, 7, 14, 28, right? And we can see that the only factor they have in common is 2. So if you need to do this for yourself so you could visualize it, if you can't do it in your head, that's completely fine. So I'm going to go on to the next page. Actually, let me erase this. So So we figured out the GCF was 2. So the original trinomial was 2x squared plus, what was it, 18x plus 28. So we know our GCF was 2. So next thing you want to do is you want to factor out that GCF. So factoring out really means you're just dividing. So we're going to divide every term by 2. So what a lot of people struggle to do in first week is when you factor out the GCF, you need to put it on the outside of the parentheses. And whatever is left of your division is on the inside. So here, 2x squared divided by 2 is just x squared. 18x divided by 2 is 9x. And 28 divided by 2 is 14. Next thing. Now, if you notice, here we can use the product and sum method. Okay, so let's do the product and sum method. So we know our A is 1, our B is 9, and our C is 14. We need two numbers that multiply to 14. So what are our factors of 14? So they are 1 times 14 and 2 times 7. And which of these factors equal to our B value, which is 9? And that's going to be 2 and 7. So that means we're going to break this down into x plus 2 times x plus 7, and we're going to leave that 2 on the outside. If you just got rid of this 2, it would not be correct. Okay. Let's do 2 more together, and then you guys will work on the practice problems. So if you get there. Okay. Let's take a look here. Let's figure out what the GCF is. So again, if you need to write out the factors for each of these terms, you may do so. But for the sake of just time of this video, the greatest common factor here is 5. So first, let's divide everything by 5. So remember, we're putting the 5 on the outside, and it's going to become x squared minus 2x plus 1. Now on the inside, we're doing that trinomial, that product sum method. I also call it trinomial method. But okay, so let's say, so our A is 1, our B is -2, and our C is +1. So we're going to have to figure out what multiplies to 1, which is just 1 times 1. Now, those two factors need to add to -2 because our B value is 2. That means both of these are going to have to be -1. Okay, so we're going to factor out the trinomial on the inside. That's going to become x minus 1 times x minus 1. And we cannot forget that 5 on the outside. So now this is factored completely. One last step here. If you look here, the terms have no coefficients in common. But what they have in common is that they all contain an x term. So the lowest, so x to the third has 3 x's here. This has 2, and 10 to the x has 1x. So what I can do is I could take 1x out of each. So that would be my GCF. Okay, so my GCF here is x. So I'm going to leave the x on the outside. So what's going to become on the inside? So x to the third divided by x to the first. Remember, you subtract the exponents, that's x squared. 11x squared over x to the first, it just becomes 11x. And 10x divided by x is just 10. These become 1. So now, you're going to do the product sum method of this trinomial on the inside. So our A is 1, B is 11, and C is 10. This one's pretty simple. What multiplies to 10? So we have 1 times 10, 2 times, and 2 times 5. And which of those equal to our B value, which is 11? And that's easy. That is 10 and 1. So that means this is going to be factored into x plus 10 times x plus 1. And you cannot forget that x on the outside. Okay? And now this is factored completely. So this is the end of lesson 7. Have a great day. See you for the next lesson.